schedules to be here because they share our passion for the advancement of women. So we thank them again for their efforts. And this, as we mentioned, is the 8th annual Women's Conference. And it's our goal that it serves as a resource for women of all walks of life. And for that reason, I'd like to ask a favor again of all of you. When you have ideas about what you'd like to have us cover in this conference, please fill out that questionnaire, if you would, on the way out, in order to give us an idea about how we can better plan next year's events. Empowering women begins with an education, especially an education in science or technology or engineering or math, or STEM as we call that field. And the reason we say that is because for many, many people, STEM jobs are going to be the jobs of the future. In the competitive environment we're in, it's critical that women are given the encouragement and given the opportunity to pursue these fields. And that's why, frankly, I was one of the co-sponsors of the STEM Education Act, which will introduce computer science to more female students. But it also does something else. It brings computer science into STEM and makes certain that we envelop that into the process as well. We're going to be 1 million degrees short with respect to the hard sciences. And what better thing to do than to encourage young women to come forward and have an opportunity early enough in life, if they're in junior high, middle school, to learn about the opportunities that are out there, the challenges that are out there. And that brings me to my next topic. Our keynote speaker is girls STEM education advocate and former Miss America, Nina Davuluri. And Nina partners with the Department of Energy. She partners with the Department of Education to promote women in STEM fields, and she works with the companies, whether it's Google or Facebook or Dell, as they hire more STEM educated women. And so with the platform she's been given as Miss America, Nina has dedicated her time to ensuring more girls and women are prepared to be trailblazers. Nina is an example of someone who shatters barriers in more ways than one, I'll tell you, and inspires women everywhere. Please welcome Nina Davuluri to the stage.
And thank you all so much for being here and sharing your morning and afternoon at this wonderful conference. I've been able to hear a little bit about the sessions that you've had, and I had something originally planned to obviously talk about today, but I just wanted to share a story echoing off of kind of the things that we touched on in terms of what's going on across the world with women and barriers to education, specifically of the girl child. I actually just got back from a tour with the State Department for a 10-day tour in India. And one of the initiatives that we really wanted to partner on when we put this tour together was with the the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs. And one of the initiatives that we wanted to focus on were education, specifically women in STEM education, also diversity and cultural competency, one of my platforms as well, and education of the girl child and what these barriers were, specifically in India. Obviously, I have a very close connection to the country. My parents immigrated there 30 years ago, so I grew up going back there every summer. But I wanted to share a story relating to what we were talking about earlier today, about women's empowerment and inspire a little bit of hope. On my trip there, I was actually able to meet an elderly lady who is 92 years old now, and her story started in 1920. And in 1920, she was a young girl in India, and her mother passed away at a very young age. She said she was about 8 years old. And when her mother knew she was terminally ill, she had told her husband that she wanted her daughters to be educated. Now this is 1920s in India. She said, it's really important to me that my daughter be the first in our family to be educated because I wasn't. And so thankfully, her father, this lady's, her name was Kote Sarama, this lady's father, he found this to be an important initiative as well, and educated not only Kote Sarama, but all of the people, all of the women and sons in his family. So through her journey, Kote Sarama, she was about 20 years old, was the first in her family to get a college degree, and she ended up actually acquiring a school at the age of about 25. In the 1950s, she acquired a school that was a kindergarten at the time. And when she acquired that school, she dedicated her entire life, and now when I visited that school 60 years later, it has evolved into a college, an institution for young women. It's an all-girls college for young women. It's a degree-granting institution from engineering to law school to medical school. So her 60 years of hard work is an incredible journey. But throughout this journey, she obviously had a family. She was married, she had a family, and her daughter's name was Sheila. Her daughter Sheila decided that she wanted to pursue a dream, and through her education, she became a computer programmer. And Sheila immigrated to the United States, got married, and started working as a computer programmer and had 2 children. Her children, one of them is now a physician, and the other is standing right here in front of you. And so I really wanted to share this story because there are stories like this that exist across the world, but there's not enough. And all of you have a call to action to actually tell these stories and to encourage others to do what you can, whether it's through a social media tweet or a campaign or partner in something. I've actually started working with a wonderful campaign called Girl Rising, and I feel like some of you have probably heard about it, but it was a documentary released about 3 years ago following 9 young girls through developing countries and their pathways and barriers to education. And one of the things that I found, not only in this documentary that I began working with a while back, but even on my tour in India, is that a lot of these young girls, we might view them as victims, but they're really not. They're really empowered, and they're really taking the initiative to speak up and stand out, but obviously we need to be sharing those stories as well. So just a little kind of story I wanted to share leading in to tie this all together before I got into my journey. But that being said, I think a lot of people have asked me kind of, why Miss America? And this journey has certainly been unconventional, I suppose. And I feel like I need to touch a little bit about the Miss America organization, even though I'm a little bit removed from it, about 2 years out now from my year of service is what we call it. But the organization itself has 4 pillars. And the first, and I think most important, is service. And throughout the entire year, you are an advocate for your platform. And my platform was diversity and cultural competency, which I'll touch on a little bit later. So every contestant in the organization is actually required to have a platform, a cause that they choose to champion for their year. The second pillar is scholarship. So I actually started competing for scholarship money. My parents were generous enough to offer to pay for a portion of my education, but I knew that I had to fund another significant portion of that. And so one of my friends recommended this organization, and I said, okay. And through my time competing, does anyone want to guess what I've earned a little? Any take a stab at it? $300,000. $300,000. Anyone else? 6,000? 70,000? 1 more, 10 million? So it's a little closer to about $92,000 in scholarship money. Because of that money, I was able to graduate debt-free from the University of Michigan, and my degree was in brain behavior and cognitive science, so I am a STEM grad, which I'll touch on later as well. And so I have about $62,000 $50,000 left to actually put towards my master's degree now, which has been really incredible, not only to pay for my education, but obviously it's given me a voice to be able to advocate for causes that I'm passionate about. The third pillar is style, and the fourth is success, to kind of encompass all of the others. So that's just a little bit about the organization. So my journey to competing, I actually competed for the title of Miss New York twice. And the first year I competed, I placed second runner-up. And the young woman who won that year, who won Miss New York, her name was Mallory, she went on to obviously compete at Miss America. And I was watching Miss America that year from home, and like I do every year, I'm not gonna lie, from home, and I watched Mallory win the title of Miss America, representing the state of New York. And I remember calling my mom hysterically for a number of reasons. And I said, "Mom, I will never win Miss America now. What are the chances that Miss New York will win 2 years in a row?" It just didn't seem very likely. And she said to me, "Well, Nina, why don't you first focus on even winning Miss New York? And then we can think about Miss America." And so this was my last year of eligibility. You have to be between the ages of 18 and 24 to compete. And I had just turned 24, so I said, okay, I'm gonna give it my last shot. And I sat down with my sister, Mina, her name is Mina. My parents thought it was cute to have rhyming names. And she said to me, Nina, why are you investing so much time into this organization? What are you really going to get out of it? And I said to her, I sincerely believe that Miss America, a few years from now, will be someone who's ethnic. And that's not to pull the race card, that's not to say, pick me, I'm brown. It just felt so timely for this organization to finally reach out to a new demographic of young women that what I felt was representative of what America is today. Because and you guys kind of know how the story culminated. I went on to achieve the title and become the first Indian American, but I can honestly say that, you know, the moment that it culminates in hysteria, it wasn't about me, it was about that young girl who was watching Miss America the night I won. And for her to finally be able to say, this year, Miss America looks like me. And I don't have to fit a stereotype of blonde hair or blue eyes or have what people might think is a normal talent to fit this role, because I certainly grew up thinking like I could never achieve this title because I didn't look a certain way. I grew up in a very small, conservative, predominantly white town in Oklahoma. I was often mistaken for Native American. People would always ask me what tribe I was in, and I had no idea. And very similar stereotypes continued to follow me. I was one of the only Indian girls in my classes. In Oklahoma, my family moved to Michigan when I was 10 years old. And people would ask me if I was going to have an arranged marriage, or what the red dot meant, or do you worship cows? Oh my goodness, you smell like curry. And so many of these remarks weren't necessarily meant to be malicious, but really simply due to the fact of ignorance. And I always knew growing up that I was different, and I saw that from a very young age, but I think when I was very, very negatively affected by it was when 9/11 happened. I was in 7th grade, and I was 12 years old. And my family went from being the little Indian family on the block to the terrorist family on the block. My house was teepeed. I had hate letters and hate mail sent to my house. My peers started treating me differently. And this was a situation I found myself in where I had a choice, first of all. And I had to constantly correct stereotypes and change this negative conversation in a positive way where I was able to educate others about my culture, about my heritage, about my background, religion, and beliefs. And although it was a difficult journey to get past that, I think it certainly was a defining moment, because through that, I was able to create my own program, which is now called Circles of Unity. I founded that when I was in college about 8 years ago. It's getting longer and longer, I can't believe it. 8 years ago, and this is not, I think we hear the word diversity quite a bit. It's such a buzzword that we say now, but what is actually something tangible that we can see done from it? And that's why I really like the idea of cultural competency. And so my program really creates this open conversation about cultures and assimilation, especially growing up second generation Asian American. It was really difficult to find that balance of being Indian and being American or whatever it might be. And the reality of the situation is that you can't expect your children to be raised in America 100% Indian or 100% Hispanic or whatever it might be. It's a healthy balance of both cultures, and finding that is certainly an evolving, lifelong process. So most of my talk relates to college university students working with South Asian organizations, offices of diversity and inclusion, to build a more inclusive society on campuses and transitioning into the workplace as well. So through that, I think another initiative I was able to take on, which has been interesting, was STEM education. And when I sort of started competing, it was for scholarship money, and I was initially pre-med, and I had won, and my platform was diversity and breaking these stereotypes. And while I broke one stereotype in one way, I was kind of fitting the other stereotype. It's like, oh, well, she's Indian and she wants to be a doctor. That's, a stereotype these days. And so there was this kind of conflict, but what I was able to do was actually talk about it from the sense that yes, I'm very proud of my education, and I worked very hard for it, and certainly I will go into any place and say that it's the #1 thing I'm the most proud of, and that's helped me succeed in life. And so being able to reach out to young girls, especially as young as kindergarten, and have them see someone like Miss America, an unconventional role model who's typically more so associated with beauty, promoting STEM education, I think, is a very powerful message for them to see. And so the Miss America organization had actually been working with STEM education for 3 years before the time I came, but I was the first to actually have a degree in that field. So that was able to launch this organization and the STEM platform on an entirely new level. And actually 70% of the young women that compete on the Miss America stage are involved in STEM-related fields, which is really incredible, and we give specific STEM scholarship awards. So that's kind of why STEM has played a role in this, and I also like to talk about it from the standpoint to think outside the box of what STEM is. I think oftentimes we're so confined into the engineer, programmer, or doctor, but there's so many different fields, and I was actually speaking at Georgia Tech, and there was the team of women engineers who were 3D printing eyeshadow and shoes. I mean, that was so, how awesome is that for any young girl to hear about it? One of the things I was able to do, we have a cosmetic sponsor. I was able to go into the lab. Chemistry is actually one of my favorite subjects. I was a TA for a while. And I was actually able to go into the lab and create my own lip gloss. And then one of my actually male friends who was really interested in art, I should say guy friends, really, who was really interested in art when we were growing up throughout high school. We still keep in touch. He actually works for Whirlpool now, and when I was there, I met with him. And he's now the lead designer for all the small kitchen appliances, textiles, like finishes and colors and all of that. So all of these are STEM-related fields that people might not necessarily think of, and I think it's really important that colleges, high schools, and educators make these resources available and let them know that there are different career paths. It's not just A, B, and C. There's a number of different ones. I can talk all day about a lot of things, but I'm not going to do that to you. I just wanted to touch a little bit on, of course, more recently I talked about the advocacy work that I'm doing with Girl Rising, cultivating that unique niche that I have between US and India, since that is near and dear to my heart. But I also wanted to take a few questions from you guys, because I really want to know what you wanted to hear about and have a wonderful conversation and discussion. But before I open the floor, I just have 4 few tips that I wanted to share with all of you that I've picked up along the way. So just take it with a grain of salt, but something that I thought would hopefully be helpful to this group specifically. The first is try again. And I know we have all heard that forever, I think. I've heard that from a young age. But I would like to share a story specifically to the younger girls and audience here. My dream school was the University of Michigan. I cannot tell you that that was my #1 school. I had my eyes on it. I went to visit my cousin, and my sister went there, and so that was the school I wanted to go to. And to make a long story short, I didn't get in. And you can imagine what my parents said. Oh my goodness, what are we going to tell everyone? From a South Asian family, that was their #1 concern. And so I actually ended up going to my safety school, which at the time was Michigan State University. And I remember literally the day I moved in, my freshman year, move-in day at Michigan State University, I ended up driving to Ann Arbor, which is about an hour drive, hour and a half, to Ann Arbor, and I met with an admissions counselor, and I said, what do I do to transfer to get into this university? She told me what I needed to do, told me what I needed to work on, and that spring I was accepted to the University of Michigan. And so I'm proud to say that yes, my degree is in there, but I share this story because I could have very easily said, okay, well, it didn't work out the first time, but you never know what's going to happen that second or third or fourth time. My second piece of advice is anytime you find yourself in a negative situation, find a way to turn it into a positive one. There is always a silver lining. Right after I won Miss America, I was faced with a lot of xenophobic comments about who I was, my religion, I was called a terrorist, the list goes on, Miss 7-Eleven, that's one of my favorites. And I can honestly say that if I didn't handle it in the way that I did, I don't think it would have been well received. You can't fight fire with fire. And for every one negative comment, tweet, or post, I think there were hundreds, if not thousands, of words of positive encouragement and remarks from people all across the world championing this. That is certainly a huge silver lining. The third is be yourself. I know that we hear that all the time, but when you walk into an interview room, just remember that no matter who you meet, people are people are people. And to have a genuine conversation with someone and shake someone's hand and be who you are, I think is the most valuable thing you can do, because if you're not, people will absolutely see right through it. And the fourth, last but not least, is ask yourself how you want to be remembered. I usually share this story with younger folks, but it's one that I'll share with you guys regardless. When I was in 6th grade, there was a young boy in my class who said, oh my goodness, Nina Davuluri has a bigger mustache than my dad. It was kind of true. But nonetheless hurtful. And no matter what this gentleman now becomes, he can become the next CEO, the next senator, the next president of the United States, and I will forever remember him for that one comment. So all of you have the choice to leave that impression on every person that you meet, so make sure that you're making those positive impressions and choices, and ask yourselves how you want to be remembered. So with that, thank you all so much for being here. Shout out a question, more than happy. Bueller? Yes.
With your travels around the world, what do you think is the greatest lessons you've learned from the young women you educated? What have they taught you?
With my travels around the world, what is the greatest lesson that I've learned from young people that I've interacted with? I have visited a classroom for Pratham, which is a charity and NGO that I've worked extensively with between the US and India. And I have to say, out of all their classrooms, this was the one I was most nervous to visit because I wasn't sure emotionally how I would react to it personally, because it is difficult when you see certain situations. And when I walked into this room, they were children between the ages of 9 and 13. And they were so positive and so full of light and life, and the eagerness to learn from these children I have never seen in any classroom before. And these are children who are at poverty, whose parents can't afford education, that are literally working for their education and wanting to be in this classroom and learn. And so I think that was very emotional for me, but also that eagerness and that drive is something that I've learned to not lose sight of no matter how old you get.
Something I enjoyed hearing you say was teach our girls that STEM isn't just ABC, and I want to applaud you for that, and then ask all the women, find out what are these careers that our daughters can go YouTube and do that and make that effort. It's not easy, but we can enlighten them. And my 12-year-old loves the Girl Rising and sharing it in their middle school. So
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yes.
To dovetail on your comment, how young can schools develop, at what age can schools develop curricula? Because I have a 4.5-year-old granddaughter who has a vivid imagination, and I would like to imagine that when she starts kindergarten, that there will be some curriculum. So what can we do to encourage schools to start to develop curriculum at a young age?
Absolutely. One of the groups that I was able to meet with when I was lobbying in DC was with the Einstein Fellows. And they're actually a group of educators from the kindergarten to college level educators who come together to really discuss STEM topics in education. The number one thing that I've heard in many conversations, not just this one, was that we need to start as early as kindergarten, if not before, from the time that they are young and retaining information, because we're losing our young girls. If we start implementing this in middle school, we've already lost a large portion of girls who are interested in these fields. I think I was actually in Sacramento last month. Certainly an evolving process, and even when and it's followed me, it continues to follow me. I mean, forever. Like, don't even get me started on dating and everything. But because I found something that I really loved, that I felt was such a huge part of who I was able to share that. And even when I competed for Miss America, I can't tell you how many people said to me, Nina, if you're really serious about winning, change your talent, because Bollywood will never win. You're too Indian, be more American, America's just not right. And I remember thinking, well, if I'm gonna do this, it has to be in my way and in my terms. And that's what I stuck to. So I feel like it's definitely an evolving process.
Yes, I would just like to mention here that on April 6th, the University of Southern California is bringing together, the State Department is bringing out to Los Angeles 15 women of courage, the International Women of Courage, that they have selected. These women will be giving a talk at the University of Southern California on all of these issues. And I belong to an organization, American Women for International Understanding, which is on the internet, and that is what we have done since 1936. It's a smaller organization, national, but any of you would like to get into, we get into human trafficking. We get to know people, teleconferences with women from Libya, and so forth. It's not high pressure, but and we also offer grants, and last year we offered 13 grants to women throughout the world in little villages. It gets right down to them for sewing machines and whatever, but it's a wonderful organization. So USC on the from 12 to 1 on April 6th. Just go on the internet for USC and you'll find the International Women of Courage, but also the organization I belong to is American Women for International Understanding, and we'd love to have you.
Great, thank you for sharing that information.
I just want to also recognize that we have a Edison STEM Field Scholar in the room. She's one of 30 years. I just want to recognize the fact that we have Edison STEM Field Scholar in the room. She's a young lady who's one of 30 scholars in Southern California for STEM. And her name is Camille Schlesinger. I'd just like her to stand.
Advice to give for any girls competing in Miss America organization?
Well, first of all, can you share how much scholarship money you've won?
This is actually my first time competing. I have been involved in this organization ever since I was little. So I just got $450 in scholarship.
Awesome. And what's your platform?
My platform is Make Music Matter, and it's to inspire teens to continue playing a musical instrument.
Awesome. So that's my advice. Continue speaking, continue being an advocate, continue sharing your message. You're doing a great job.
Quickly ask Camille Schlesinger, the fellow from Edison STEM Education. Why don't you come up? And Miss Outstanding Teen, why don't you come up here with Miss America? We're going to speaking at our annual women's conference here in Cal State.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies, again very much for attending today. On the way out, the tables where you checked in, there's big bins there. Feel free to drop your surveys off there so that we can make next year bigger, better, more awesome with all of your help and feedback. Thank you so much, everyone, for all of your time.